I was spending Christmas alone that year. It wasn't dramatic or tragic, just a mix of work, distance, and bad timing. My family lived several states away, and traveling during winter wasn't an option. I stayed behind in my small apartment, telling myself it would just be another quiet week. The city emptied out faster than I expected. By Christmas Eve, most of my building was dark. The hallway lights stayed on, but the usual sounds were gone. No televisions, no doors opening, no footsteps. Just a hollow kind of silence that made every small noise feel louder than it should. I cooked a simple dinner and turned on the radio for background noise. Soft Christmas music filled the room, but instead of comfort, it only made the apartment feel emptier. Around 10 that night, snow began to fall. Thick flakes drifted past the windows, glowing under the streetlight below. I stood there for a while, watching the world grow quieter. That's when I heard singing. At first, I thought it was the radio, but the voice didn't match the song playing. It was slow, slightly off-key, and barely above a whisper. I turned the radio off. The singing didn't stop. It was coming from outside. I moved closer to the window and tilted the blinds just enough to look down. A single figure stood beneath the streetlight, snow gathering on their shoulders and hat. A caroller. No candle, no songbook. Just standing there, facing my building, singing softly into the night. It didn't make sense. Carollers usually came in groups. They knocked on doors. They didn't stand alone in the snow, singing to empty apartments. When the song ended, the figure didn't move. They stood still, head tilted slightly upward, as if listening. Then they started again. Same song, same slow pace, same wrong notes. My phone buzzed. A neighbor across the hall had texted me, asking if I heard the singing. I told them yes, that someone was outside under the streetlight. There was a long pause before they replied. They said there was no one outside. My stomach tightened. I looked back through the blinds. The street was empty. No figure, no footprints. Just untouched snow glowing under the light. The singing continued. It was closer now, not from the street, but from the hallway. I stepped away from the window as the sound drifted through the walls. Slow footsteps accompanied the voice, measured and deliberate. The singing stopped right outside my door. I stood perfectly still. Something brushed against the door, not knocking, just resting there, feeling the surface. Then the singing began again, softer now, right on the other side of the door. It sounded wrong, like it was too close, like it wasn't fully outside at all. The doorknob turned gently, stopped, then turned again. The singing cut off mid-note. Silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. After a long moment, I heard footsteps moving away down the hallway, slow and unhurried. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, there were no footprints in the hallway. No marks near my door. No sign anyone had been there. Later that day, I found a note slipped under my door. No handwriting, just printed words. Thank you for listening. I didn't spend the rest of Christmas there. And every year since, on Christmas Eve, I turned the radio off early.
I agreed to house sit for my aunt a few days before Christmas. She and her husband were visiting family out of state, and they didn't want to leave the house empty. It was a large, older home in a quiet neighborhood where every house looked the same. Once snow covered the yards. I arrived on December 23rd, just as dusk was settling in. The house was already decorated. Lights on the roof, garland on the stairs, and a tall Christmas tree glowing softly in the living room. It felt warm and familiar, the kind of place that should have felt safe. There were presents under the tree. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed they were gifts my aunt planned to give when she returned. Some were wrapped neatly, others more casually, all in different paper. I didn't touch them. It felt wrong to snoop. That night passed quietly. Snow fell steadily outside, muffling the neighborhood. The house creaked now and then, old wood settling in the cold. I slept well. On Christmas Eve morning, I noticed something different. There were more presents under the tree. I stood there for a long moment trying to convince myself I had miscounted, but I knew I hadn't. A long, narrow box leaned against the wall that hadn't been there before. 2 small packages sat near the front, wrapped in plain brown paper with twine tied around them. I checked my phone. No missed messages. No explanation. I texted my aunt asking if she had someone dropping things off. She replied a few minutes later, confused, saying no. She told me not to worry about it and joked that maybe I had a secret admirer. Laughed it off, but the feeling stayed with me. That evening, as it got dark, I noticed the front porch light flicker. When I looked outside, the snow on the steps was untouched. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. The house felt quieter than it had the night before. Around midnight, I heard a soft rustling sound from downstairs. Not footsteps. More like paper shifting. Cardboard rubbing against cardboard. I stayed in bed, listening. Sound came again. Longer this time. Finally worked up the nerve to go downstairs. Every step creaked loudly beneath my feet. The living room lights were off, but the Christmas tree still glowed. The presents had been moved. They were no longer casually placed. They were arranged in a neat line, all facing the couch, as if waiting to be opened. One of them had my name on it. The tag was simple, no decoration, just my name printed in block letters. I didn't touch it. I backed away slowly and returned upstairs, locking the bedroom door behind me. I barely slept. Every small sound felt amplified, like the house was listening. In the morning, the presents were back under the tree, scattered the way they had been before. My name was gone from the tag. The brown paper packages were missing entirely. I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. Christmas night came. I stayed up late, keeping the TV on low for noise. Sometime after 2 a.m., the power went out. The television snapped off, plunging the house into darkness except for the tree lights, which stayed on. That's when I heard the sound again. Paper tearing, slow, careful. I stood at the top of the stairs, heart pounding, and looked down. Someone was kneeling by the tree, their back to me. They were opening a gift with deliberate precision, peeling the paper away without making a mess. I couldn't see their face. I whispered hello. They froze. Then, without turning around, they spoke. Weren't supposed to see this yet. The tree lights flickered. When they steadied again, the living room was empty. The opened gift sat beneath the tree. Inside was nothing, just the box. I left the house that night. When my aunt returned, she said all the gifts were exactly where she left them. None were missing. None had been opened. She asked me why I hadn't put the new presents away. I asked her what she meant. She told me there had always been one gift under the tree with my name on it. I worked the late shift at a small hotel one Christmas season, the kind of place people stayed at because everything else nearby was booked. It sat just off the highway, surrounded by snow-covered fields and a line of trees that blocked the wind but also made the nights feel closed in. On Christmas Eve, I was alone at the front desk after midnight. The lobby lights were dimmed, the Christmas decorations switched off except for a small tree behind the counter. Most of the guests were asleep. A few rooms were empty. It was the quietest shift of the year. At 12:17 a.m., the front desk bell rang. The sound cut through the silence sharply. I looked up, expecting to see a guest standing at the counter, maybe needing towels or a wake-up call. No one was there. I walked around the desk and checked the lobby doors. Locked. The parking lot outside was empty, snow undisturbed beneath the lights. I told myself the bell had been nudged by vibration from the heater and went back to my chair. At 12:29 a.m., the bell rang again. This time, I watched it happen. The bell moved on its own, depressing slowly, as if an invisible finger pressed it down. When it released, the sound echoed longer than it should have. I stood up, my heart pounding, and called out into the empty lobby. My voice sounded too loud, too thin. No answer. I unplugged the bell and set it inside a drawer. At 12:41 a.m., the sound rang out again. The bell was still in the drawer. The noise came from the counter itself, vibrating through the wood. A perfect imitation of the bell's tone, as if the desk remembered the sound and decided to repeat it. I backed away. The automatic doors at the front of the lobby slid open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of snow and something older, like wet fabric left too long in the dark. One stood outside. The doors closed again slowly. Out. The phone behind the desk rang. I picked it up immediately, desperate for a human voice. All I heard was breathing, slow, even, patient. Then a voice spoke, soft and calm. "Front desk." "I know," the voice replied. I rang. The lobby lights flickered. The small Christmas tree behind the counter went dark. Footsteps crossed the lobby. I couldn't see anyone, but the sound moved steadily toward me, stopping just inches away. The bell rang one last time, right beside my ear. I ran, didn't finish that shift, didn't go back after that night. When I returned weeks later to collect my last paycheck, the manager told me something strange. He said the bell had been removed years ago. Guests complained that it rang at night, even when no one was there, especially on Christmas Eve.